Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to this week's informal lecture series. And this week's topic is the help files. So let's do a couple housekeeping things right off the bat. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Arc Pro. And I want to remind everyone in the Bureau that currently we are on version 3.2.1. So when this pops up, you're going to get the little warning in the upper right-hand corner that says there is a software update. Remember, we're all going to do this as a group. We're going to update together so that everybody's on the same version of the software. So if there is any incompatibility issues, we won't interact them. We won't pass them to other users effectively. We won't pass the problem to other users effectively. But what I wanted to talk about today was help files and how they function in ArcGIS. And last week, when we were talking about the settings, we went through one of the options that said the online help files, or I forget what they called the other part of it. It wasn't online help files, it
Offline?
was offline help files. And one of the things that happens when we're working with these things is fundamentally, almost every software has help files for them. So one of the comments that I'll make is if you're using a mobile laptop or something like that, you want to make sure you were using the offline help files just in case you're out in the field and you need a question answered for you. You can go ahead and get that information while you're out in the field. If you're mostly working on GIS in the office, this is a little bit less of a concern. So, pick your settings based off of where you do most of your GIS work to begin with. But in most softwares, hitting the F1 key, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my F1 key now, will bring up a window. There it is. We'll bring up the ArcGIS help file. And quite literally, this starts on a splash screen that is the basic foundational help file page. This is how ArcGIS Pro works effectively. But with that, you can come up here and search for any number of things. So today I was working with one of our geologists, Kevin Hobbs, and we were searching for building footprints. So if I search for building footprints, it pulls up a bunch of articles and discussions where those keywords are brought up. And you can see there's a lot of discussions on these things. So there is lots of information at your fingertips. One of the problem, and the other statement that I should say is I use this a lot. The help files, you live and breathe in them. With the software being as diverse, broad, and all-encompassing as it is, not any one person can know every aspect of GIS. It's just too deep, too big, too broad. So when you're in these realms and you're working on things, sometimes you need to be able to search for things. And the help files are the greatest thing in the world for that. And there's a few other things that we can do. We can be GIS savvy or search savvy, Google savvy, however you want to call it. I tend to do things like ArcGIS Pro, and then I typically ask my question like I want to. How do I get the boundary of a raster or something like that? So if I click on that, articles show up. And a lot of the times there's going to be two different things that show up. One of them will almost always be GIS Stack Exchange, and the other one will almost always be the Esri community, the GIS help files. So right off of the bat, we can see that there's solutions to these things right at the core of it, but it kind of depends on how you ask the question. And one of the key things that I recommend when asking GIS questions is to include GIS keywords so that those topics come up. And then with the way that search engines operate using databases of information and queries, and now we're getting into the realm of AI searches, you can directly ask questions now. And my only worry long term is I've done a little playing with this. I have seen, I would call it plagiarism. When AI steals the information from these articles to provide you with the information that you're seeking. I would rather go to the source myself than have the AI generated summary of the discussion. So that's one of the things that I'm going to give a warning to, and I may be giving this warning probably for the last time, because it seems like this is the way that the AI world is going, that likely more of your searches, more of your functions will be filtering through AI. There's a part of me that really doesn't like that, but I may have to get over that because it seems to be the way that technology is being forced to drive in the direction of. So that's how I search for things. The other thing that's really nice about this as well is if you're working on a specific tool, a lot of the times, if you come to the toolbox, and I'm just going to pick some random tool, let's do let's do reclassify. So I clicked on the reclassify tool, and just so you know, in ArcMap, we used to have the show help option where it would always tell you about each of the individual components information. And as I'm sliding up and down, you should be looking at that blue information button sliding up and down along the page. Along with that is the, what is this tool? Click here for more help. Any guesses on where that's going to go? Surprise, it automatically takes you to the GIS help files for that specific tool, and they're also grouped by the tool set. So you notice that I went into the 3D analyst, I went into conversion tools, and I went into the reclass tools. So you can see here how it's nested in the group of information, pulling up information about that specific tool and how it functions. One of the things that you will find as you begin using the help files more and more often is that you end up with a web of web pages that you go through. And this is one of the things that I don't like doing because I just clicked on one of the sub articles. As I go through the help files, more often than not, there are links inside the help file. So I'm going to go back and show that there's a link in the help file. And as I'm reading through, it is recommended to calculate statistics on a mosaic data set before reclassifying the data. Ooh, what if I have a mosaic data set? Or what if I don't know what a mosaic data set is? The urge to click on this and get that information, and then you're in this rabbit hole, and then you're in the next rabbit hole, and you can just keep going down the rabbit hole, and you're kind of losing the threads along the way. So this is my suggestion, not an absolute. My suggestion is when you start down the rabbit hole, you may want to right click on a link and say open link in new tab. Just a suggestion, just a comment, so that you can bounce to that next tab, go over, read what you need to read, and then you can return back to where you were in line. You don't lose your spot. You can just keep working through things. So it's kind of nice to have those open. In conjunction with this help file, you will also find these informations in the actual ArcGIS online help files. The comment that I will make is more often than not, you don't need to go to the full help file when you know what the input raster is, you know what the reclass field is, but you don't know what the reclassification is. Maybe you don't understand what that term, that keyword is trying to get at. If you hover over the information, it pulls up the pertinent information from that online help file of what that section of that tool specifically does and what your options are for that field. So it's kind of nice because this has become more of a dynamic environment for what the help files do, much like it was when you were in ArcMap, but you'd physically have to like click on output raster for that show help to switch to the help section of the specific field or segment of the tool that you were actually working in. So that's one of the things that I wanted to cover because more often than not, you know through your search what tool you want to use. You may not know the specifics of how things are used, or in many cases, these fields of the tool will have multiple options to choose from, and you may not remember which option is the right one for you. So let's go ahead and look up the simplify line tool. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to this. Oops. I'm going to switch to the simplify line tools. So there's lots of different algorithms to do this simplification. Does everyone know what Douglas Pucker is? What about Wang Mueller? Does anyone know what these mathematic operations mean? Off the top of my head, I do now, but when I started, I didn't. And that's why these help files can be very handy, because if you hover over the information, it tells you what each of them does. And more often than not, I found that this was good information, but I know that the help file is just giving me the generics of these informations, not the full verbose description of everything. So a lot of the times you click the help. The tool pulls up some different information here as well, so it shows the different models. But if we then open the browser, we can look in more detail at what all of these things mean and how they affect our models in different ways. So you can see that there's a discussion for the simplification algorithm, but then there's also the tolerance of each of these methodologies and what they mean for each of the different methodologies. So you can do the deep dive in here into the tool in more verbose detail. And almost always at the end, there's a discussion of the parameters and kind of a recap shorthand of the information in the help files as well. The other thing that's really nice, this is less so important for us at the Bureau and New Mexico Tech, because we have the advanced license. We have the whole kit and caboodle. But for contractors who only have the basic license, could they do, based off of this help file, could they do a simplify line? They absolutely could not, because it's not included in a basic license. You have to have the advanced license. So this is another thing that I find nice, especially when I'm talking to contractors or when I'm talking to the general public and they're asking me questions about how to do specific steps in a GIS. I come and usually look at this to figure out whether or not they'll be able to do the process that I'm suggesting they could do. That's the main thing that I wanted to cover today and discuss with everyone. I was also going to do, right, the help. If you can't remember the hotkey, the F1 hotkey, that is what this help file refers to. And that is what this link refers to as well, is actually getting you to that online help. Notice offline help isn't available to me because of my settings. So if you read that little comment, install the offline help to enable this command. And there's also language settings. But this is where you can find information, where you can find the help files if you can't remember that F1 hotkey. The comment I'm going to make to that, though, is commonly, let's go select. Let's do select by attribute. Commonly, when you hover over a tool, it has the reminder for F1 more help. And this is the cool part about this. I clicked F1 for more help. I was hovering over it. It brought up the specific F1 help file page for the tool I was hovering over. So I was hovering over the select features by attribute. I hit the F1 key and it pulled up that specific help file for me. So this is, again, more content aware functionality that is built into GIS Pro that we haven't really had previously in ArcMap, for example. That was the gist of what I wanted to cover. There wasn't much to this. So I was wondering if people had additional questions they wanted to ask or additional information that they wanted to go over about this. And then I do have one other comment that I'm going to make, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page of this.
I do have something I'd like to add.
Sure.
The setting to choose online or offline help isn't just a setting. You do have to have it installed for that setting to be available to you. And that's not something we normally install with Pro. So we would need to change the way we do that and give that to everyone, or everyone would need to let us know if you're planning to work offline so that we can make sure you have that.
And it's a good point. I think most people tend to do their GIS work in the office, so it's less of a concern, but that is a very great point. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, and it's available through my Esri download, so we'd have to provide a separate file for that.
Phil, I have a question or a comment. Uh,
Absolutely.
Oftentimes in Pro, the tool or the process or the procedure is called something different than it was in ArcMap. And to us old farts that have been in ArcMap forever, it's really hard to find the proper help file or procedure to cross connect those two. Do you have any comment on that?
No, other than, yeah, it's a reality and it drives Amy and I. It's one of the more common arguments that Amy and I just have with Esri, have with Esri regularly. Why did they change the name of this tool? And I was about to search for the tool that I just recognized the other day that they changed the name of, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. You used to do one tool, and that one tool was the way to do the thing, and now that tool does it completely different process. Do you remember what it was, Amy? It was 2 weeks
No.
ago that we were doing it. Okay. But yeah, that is a reality. And the comment that I'm going to make that question, that comment ties in perfectly to the next thing I was going to go into. So I'm going to take a little more time posting these videos than normal. And part of the reason why is Amy brought up a whole bunch of comments after I published it, and I went and edited them that night. And then I saw other things and I went and edited them again. And I republished the YouTube video. I think if you subscribed to my channel, I'm sorry, you got 3 notifications that I published that video. It's a byproduct of the fact that I was trying to get them out to people faster. And then realizing this is the reality of being Phil. It's not uncommon for me to say incorrect things. So, or misrepresent what I'm saying because I'm trying to convey information and I use the wrong term. So one of the comments that I'm going to make is on last week's video, there was a few comments that I made wrong. It's not a bad idea to go through and review that video. I realize you've all participated with this live and I greatly appreciate the participation. But there are things that I said wrong there. I was using the word data frame and I meant database, and I messed that up royally. So I wanted to make that correction and remind people that that video is online and is available. And if you think I've said something wrong, by all means, feel free to go ahead and comment in the video. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I am doing this to try and get information out there. That's the most important thing. So yeah.
I was also going to say for Rick's comment about Esri changing the names of things, I've seen some of their presentations where even their employees are annoyed with it. And they're like, we don't know why we called it this. It doesn't make any sense, but this is what it means.
Yeah, it is a source of frustration for me, but also a source of joy that they have to suffer just like we do. But yeah, I forget which tool it was, but 2 weeks ago, quite literally, Rick, I was trying to do something and the tool wouldn't do it anymore because the tool does something different. And it wasn't until I read some of the help files that said something along the lines of, it wasn't the help files, it was the user community saying, yeah, you have to go get this tool now. And it's a completely different named tool. The old tool worked just fine, but they renamed the tool and repurposed the name of this new tool. I've seen 2 or 3 instances of that in the past year, where there's now a new tool that you need to search for. But that is where searching helps.
The Esri community is also a good source of help where other people go and ask questions and you can make an account and ask questions. And I get a lot of questions answered there that aren't in Esri's official help files.
Yeah, and the other comment that I'll make as well is Amy is really good at alerting me to when there's a functionality that Arc is missing. A lot of the times the Esri community will write a post of, hey, we're missing this tool. We really need this tool back. If there's things that you guys are looking for and you need, my recommendation is make an account so you can give kudos when people make those requests, because it starts pushing it up in the stack of changes and edits that Esri makes to their products. So giving kudos to things, if more people do it, it's what forces the patches. It's what forces the updates. Oh, I shouldn't say it is what, it's one of the driving factors that forces the updates. Mark, you had a question?
Well, I was just following up on Amy's comment about Esri changing things and it irritates even the Esri employees. I remember being at one of their conferences as ArcView was starting to really take hold from ArcInfo, and they went through the same thing. And even Jack Dangerman messed up during his presentation.
It's Amy. So Amy made comments about my video. When was that, Amy? Was that last night they were doing that discussion? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But what we got into the discussion of, is this actually a view, or is this a map view or a map frame? And it kind of depends on which article you're reading and how they're using it, and whether they're talking about the map frame. I'm going to do this really quick. Well, okay, maybe really quick. Whether we're talking about the map frame in a layout, but this is also a map view as well. This is a map view. So it gets kind of weird with the way that their vocabulary overlaps. They need an ontology group at Esri to correct this problem. But yeah, it's one of those, and I'm gonna suffer because I still call these MXDs. I call this an MXD. I can't not get that out of my vocabulary. It's so hard for me to say pro project because I just want to say MXD. It's shorthand for me. It's become shorthand for the project.
And there are articles out there that Esri has put up about switching from map to pro, and some of their terminology that has changed, and you can go find those too. But
Oh, and that's also one of the other comments that's really good too. Like in Pro 1.9, they called it one thing, and in Pro 2, they called it in another. So if you're seeing and this is, let's pull that up. That's a good point. Good point. Let's just do this. You will notice in the help files, most commonly, you're looking at the help files for a version. It is really important to match versions. And you'll notice that they started deprecating ones. It's harder and harder to find the ArcMap help files anymore, but occasionally you'll do a search like I did, where I typed in ArcGIS. Oops, there it was. If I didn't include the pro part, if I just say ArcGIS, occasionally you'll still get the help files. Nope, not here. So all of these are pro, but occasionally you'll still find the map help files.
I do that all the time. I'm constantly reading the desktop help files and then like, wait, this is not what I want to be reading. Occasionally I end up on Arc Online, which is even worse. I'm like, this is completely different than what I want.
Yep, those are all really good points. Really good points. But the help files really, and the other point that I wanted to get to then make is that I'm going to say this very emphatically. I am not trying to make you guys use the help files. If you have questions, by all means, the GIS services program is here to help. If you have questions, we're not trying to make you go to the help files. We're just trying to provide you the opportunity to do some of the research on your own beforehand that maybe you can answer your own questions. I am not saying we are not here for your help. Go search the help files. What I am saying is, if you are so inclined, and I know this is my case, I'm absolutely going to speak for Amy. She will go and do an exhaustive search before she asks the question. I tend to want to do the same thing. So if you're like that, know those help files are there for you. If you're not like that and you want someone to answer your question, come to us. Send us an email. We'll be happy to answer these questions. We'll do the best we can to answer the questions. And that's the other statement that I started off with, and I kind of want to end with, is this software is too big for any one person to know the ins and outs of every tool, every script, every button, every bell, every whistle. What I excelled at was finding the answers or searching for someone else who had already talked about answers. And then a lot of the times what I learned is that when I read that other person's article or got the help from the help files or got the help from someone else, it would make me start thinking about the tool in a different way that would allow me to repurpose the tools to get the end result that I wanted. And the example I can give for that is Okay, I'm going to say this. As of ArcMap 10.8.1, there was no tool in Esri directly that would allow you to build a rose diagram. There is the what they call it. There's a business analyst tool. I can't remember what the tool is called, but if you tweak the parameters just a little bit and are savvy with what it's doing, you can actually make that tool build you a rose diagram for you. So there's tricks like that you get from the Esri community, from the user community, of how you can use tools to get at the end result that you want. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to search for the help yourself. Don't be afraid to use the Esri community. There are tons of user groups, and it even doesn't even matter which software you're using. When it comes to the user groups for the software, these are people. I'm going to say these are my people. These are the people like me. We love GIS. We love playing with GIS. We love figuring out what it can do. We love playing with this stuff. So anytime we learn a trick, we're happy to share the information out. It really is one of the coolest communities that I've ever been in for people who just want to help people come up with solutions, solve problems, come up with ways to develop the model that they want to build. It is remarkable and shocking to me how engaged the GIS community is. Leverage that, use that to your advantage. They want to help. We want to help.
Another website I use a lot is the GIS Stack Exchange, which isn't Esri specific, but it is helpful. And if you're into social media, Reddit has a GIS forum you can use. There's a few people I follow on Instagram that post tutorials all the time.
And that is kind of why I commented as well, is when I searched for my thing, you will see the GIS Stack Exchange comes up. So that's the reason why I said, the first two things that are usually going to come up are going to be an Arc Pro help file or the GIS Stack Exchange. They are outstanding. This is an amazing group. Thank you, Amy.
Mhm.